rented the second floor of an old Victorian, stone Victorian house right behind the dike. Town was on the north side of the dike, and we had one of those huge brownstone Victorian houses be below it. It was kind of interesting because they had been forecasting heavy rains, and the dikes behind our house had to be maybe 40, 50 feet tall. They were extremely large, and we used to go up on top of them, living right behind them, and lay out a blanket and have lunch quite often up there. And they kept forecasting these heavy rains, and so we kept climbing up on the dam and looking at it all through the day, because it was raining like a big dog and raining even harder upriver. And we kept checking the levels and trying to, we never thought it would go out of the dikes, which it hadn't for many, many years before. And so, we kind of laughingly just kept track of it until it got dark. And just before it got dark, we walked up on top of the dike, and it was within a foot or 2 feet of the top of the dike, where it had been probably 30 feet below it on a normal day.
One thing I remember is they told us, it's going to go over. We've heard that it's going to go over the dike. You better get up in the hills. We had no idea how to get up into those hills. We had just gotten there, and all the roads we knew were flooded and we couldn't get out. So I felt really trapped. I didn't know where to go.
In parts of town we could get to the first day, it looked terrible. There were gasoline storage tanks at service stations out of the ground. They'd been floated out of the ground. It just looked terrible. And as we were right behind the dike, we figured the house was gone. We figured everything we had was gone. But being a big old stone Victorian house, it flooded the first floor, didn't get to us on the second floor, and we lost absolutely nothing. I think it was 3 days before we were able to get back to the house. Brought in a number of them. He lived a ways out of town up on a higher area, so he wasn't even near the water. And Lenny and his wife brought some people in. I couldn't remember who. Jan remembers shoveling with all of us, shoveling mud out of, there was, probably 3 bachelor ball players living together. I believe one of them was Jimmy Norris, and shoveling mud out of their first floor, just trying to get to the floor.
Well, I remember there being 7 bridges across the river in Elmira, and all of them were knocked out but one. And we had to stand in line to get across that, and we had to go across that to get to Lenny's house.
They put us on a bus to Waterbury, Connecticut, and told us we were going to Waterbury to play our home games. But they did not tell us until we got halfway to Waterbury that we weren't coming back. Yeah, I can remember kind of a truck stop, convenience store we stopped at, and Lenny let everybody use the phone and call their wives and tell them we weren't coming back. But Lenny got us out of town before he told us that.
Well, I thought, they're not going to come home until the ballpark is ready, so we might as well help clean it up. And Lenny's wife did all the organization. She worked with the city. And at first we were way down on the priority because, we were a ballpark. But then they decided that maybe the people needed some entertainment. So they pushed us up, because the first thing we needed was a front loader to come in and come under, because the water was all the way to the top of the clubhouse. And the front loader had to come in and scoop up all the remains of the concession stands and everything.
And if I'm not mistaken, they had a big promotion the following week, and they had like 10,000 hot dogs in the freezers.
Well, they wouldn't come in the concession stands. And so we had to clean the concession stands and put everything in the hallway or whatever. And there was this horrible smell, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And finally, one of the freezer was actually tipped over and pushed against the wall. And so we pulled it out. And that's when we found our 10,000 moldy hot dogs. And we had to scoop it out of there. Everywhere the floodwaters touched had to be disinfected. And the floodwaters went up several, rows of stands. So as well as disinfecting everything underneath, all the concession stand and everything, we had to go up and disinfect the stands. The foreman got us together before and said, now, listen, these guys haven't seen a woman at least 6 months, so don't be alone with. We never had any trouble. We have to admit we were really being selfish because we were just trying to get our husbands home.
Another interesting thing is she said she couldn't believe how we lived in the clubhouse and the type of clothes we had in the clubhouse when they got in there and started cleaning. She said that was a mess and she could not believe the stuff that we wore.
We called everything out to the Johnston's house. And I always said we should have done an advertisement for the laundry detergent we use, because everything was covered in mud and it was just black, and we had to wash it twice, but it all came out clean. How they ever figured out whose jock strap belonged to who, I don't know, but we got it all clean. And I remember her driveway was just all the way out to the street with shoes drying out and gloves.